is it recording?
I thought you would be done by.
Okay. Okay, good evening. Hopefully everybody can hear us. If there's any kind of issues or whatever you might come across during this Zoom meeting, you can put into the chat. We have Adam Lamb here who will be monitoring the chat. And my name is Mark Sheldon. I am the club's recruiting coordinator. And I will be kind of the presenter for the first part, and then we will turn it over to the three coaches that you should be able to see currently. And I will let them introduce themselves, starting with my right, I don't know what left.
My name is Jeff Cole, I'm the head men's soccer coach at Johnson County Community College.
I'm Kevin Wardlaw. I'm the men's coach at Mid-American Nazarene University in Olathe.
Ryan Poor, head men's soccer coach at UMKC.
And we had Eddie Horn, who is going to be representing the NCAA Division II, but a work conflict arose that he couldn't get out of. So Ryan will serve as all of NCAA expert. So
Perfect.
all right, so I'm going to try to share the screen, and we will go through just kind of the recruiting process and how to market yourself, branding, basically to college coaches in that recruiting process. So let's see. Okay, Adam, do you see it? Okay, so the purpose of tonight is really just to present some information. Some of you've gone through it maybe yourselves. You've gone through it with other children, but some of you I know have really probably no idea, and so some of this information may be very relevant. Some might be something that you've already used to, but we just want to present the information so that everybody has it. We are also recording this Zoom meeting, and we will put it up on our website. So if there's people, family members, spouse that wasn't able to be on the Zoom, they can also access the information as well. Plus, there will be a PDF of this presentation. So it's not like you need to jot down notes or anything during the meeting, because we will go through some of it kind of quick. And then at the end, we will do a Q&A session where there are some questions that were already submitted prior to the meeting that we sent the link to, and we will have our college coaches answer those. And then we will provide an opportunity for you to also submit questions in the chat if we didn't address whatever that you might want to know. Okay. All right. So first, kind of gives you an idea of the agenda, as I mentioned. Gives you the college coaches, the people involved tonight. But really, from a club perspective, one of the things that we provide for free to all our members, once they are of high school age, is access to the Choose It Right platform. And this is a great platform that essentially you can research colleges, soccer programs. It even gives you where you can put in preferences in terms of certain geographic regions or, college programs, levels, whatever it may be. You can kind of set those preferences to what you're looking for. And then the platform will actually go through and give you ideas of all the schools with certain soccer programs, within certain geographic regions, within different majors, things like that. And again, this is all free to our club members. And all of you should have received an email with the access and the code to get in for free and create your account. If you have not, you can send an email to us after tonight, and we will make sure to get you the login and everything as well. So a lot of times I will tell you that people have gotten these emails in the past because we upload every year all the players, whether it's old or new, and it just kind of goes to your spam or your junk folder. So check that out first, and then if you still don't see it, then definitely contact us, please. Okay. All right. So what are your choices when you're beginning this recruiting process or thinking ahead? So there's nearly about 1,250 schools that offer men's soccer programs in the United States. And you can see the breakdown in terms of NCAA. You have Division 1, 2, and 3. Division 1, there's about 205 programs, men's programs. In Division 2, there's about 206. And then D3 has 415 or so. The difference being is Division 3 does not offer any athletic financial aid. It's predominantly all academic and or other types of awards, but it's not because of athletic or soccer that you get money from those schools. Typically, it's a little harder academically, like GPA and test scores, in order to get into those schools, right? Division 1 and 2, they do offer scholarships, and I will let Ryan correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to be fully funded in Division 1 men's soccer, they have 9.9 scholarships. In Division 2, I believe the max is 9 scholarships. So if you think about it, right, you have a roster of, let's say, 25, 26 or more. You have to split that money amongst all those kids. So the notion that, your kid's going to get a full ride, everything's free, is kind of, unless they're playing for the U.S. national team, youth level or whatever, it's not realistic because that money has to be divided amongst the entire roster, right? In NAIA, there's about approximately 188 men's soccer programs currently. And then in the junior college, there's around 217, and they actually differentiate between D1, Division 1, Division 2, and 3. And Division 1 and 2, you do get financial aid. Division 3 in junior college, you do not. In Division 1 of junior college, I believe you get financial aid towards your room and board, but in Division 2, you do not. Currently, I believe there's a max of 24 now. All right, 24 scholarships for junior colleges in the men's side. So when you start this whole recruiting process, right? So some things for you to consider, right? So when you're creating your list of potentially where you want to go, right? And where you want to play, you have to think about some of these things, right? So the level, you need to be, realistic as to what your abilities are, and then where you think you can go play. Obviously, NCAA Division 1 is probably, the higher level in general, but it really doesn't matter in the men's game, to be honest, because, there's NAIA division, there's kids that go to Division 2, 3, NAIA, junior college, even for whatever reason, where you have players that have gone on to become, let's say, pro soccer players. Okay. So the level shouldn't really dictate to you as much as, the specific program and seeing like the history of what they've done, and the players that have gone through. So you should look at, when you're researching schools, look at the roster size, right? So typically, I would say NCAA, because of the limitations in the financial aid and the scholarships, they're going to have generally, let's say, smaller rosters, but it may still be upwards of in the high 20s and even into the 30s, but generally they're going to keep it somewhat in the mid 20s. Some NAIA schools, they have rosters that are huge because it's they have maybe a like a junior varsity, or I don't know if that's a reserve team, right? So there might actually be opportunities where there's two teams, kind of like the competitive varsity or whatever, the first team, and then you have a reserve team. And if you count up all those kids, you're looking at potentially of 40 and even a little bit more of the number of players on their roster. Junior college, you're looking at probably in the mid 20s, mid to high 20s, but then you're looking at every year probably half of them being gone, and they got to recruit a whole new class, right? Graduation needs, so depending on like the position you play, right? If you're a goalkeeper and they already have 3 goalkeepers and one's like a senior, one's a sophomore, and one's a freshman, you probably need to, there's only one spot that a goalkeeper can play in. So, if they already have 3 or 4 that are underclassmen and not graduating, the possibility of you coming in to start or play right away may not be realistic, right? So look at the roster, look at the spot that you play, the role, and then see, if they have a freshman All-American or a sophomore All-American, you're probably not going to come in and beat them out for their starting position. So you got to look at that as well. Other things to consider: facilities, their conference affiliation, right? Like who do they play? Look at how long the coach has been at the school, because if someone's been there beyond, let's say, 10 years, the likelihood is they're probably going to stay there. If somebody's new, depends on, opportunities, they may or may not be there. So you got to kind of look at all these things. And then, look at, like, I would suggest you look at a game. If you can see it online, or try to catch a live games at some point during the fall season, you need to be able to see how they play. Because if you're like a central midfielder who wants to be on the ball a lot, but you see that that particular school and their style of play is bypassing the midfield, that may not be the right fit for you, right? So you got to look at all that kind of stuff. Other kind of things to consider, right? When you look at programs, you look at the campus, do you like the campus, the location and the size? Look at like the team culture when you go there, and look at like the bench and the players and where they're from, and kind of, see what that might look like. You're going to need to probably consider your financial aid and other types of either athletic or academic grants and awards, because that may be a determining factor as to whether you want to go there or not. Definitely you need to look at, do they offer your major or academic area of study? And then last thing would be, what's your GPA and test scores, right? Now test scores are kind of becoming irrelevant. The NCAA passed where like ACT and SAT scores aren't necessary as much, in terms of the eligibility process, and so but the GPA definitely helps. If you want like academic money, it always helps, right? So what is kind of the timeline for the recruiting process, right? So your freshman or your 9th grade year, when you get to high school and you start, right? Suggestion would be is to meet with your school counselor, right? Go through and think about the different levels. I put here the NCAA core courses. If you do that, you're probably going to meet the other levels of NAIA and junior college requirements. But I know personally, we had a kid that wanted to go, and she was recruited to KU, offered a scholarship and everything. And then for whatever reason, she took a different math course than the required NCAA required course. And that basically ended her career at the Division I level at KU, right? So just make sure that all the classes you take, you can only take so many PE credits or whatever other, you got to make sure you get your core English, math, language, all that stuff taken care of. With that in mind, then create a 4-year academic plan as to what kind of classes you're going to take. Just be aware that you cannot be, according to NCAA rules, you will not be able to be contacted until after June 15, following your sophomore year, your 10th grade year. So far as NAIA, it's really like no rules. So as long as they're not handing you cash, then you're okay. At the junior college level,
We hand the cash to the players.
so they might give you cash, dollar bills or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, at the different levels, just kind of understand what their rules are. So if you were to, be at a tournament or something and you're a freshman and you see a Division I coach or Division II coach and you say hi and they don't seem very responsive, or you send them an email, they can't respond to that email until after your June 15 of your sophomore year. So it's not that they're, not interested. They just can't do it for compliance reasons. Start keeping a record of your athletic and academic achievements, whatever it may be, being on the honor roll or, being voted MVP or captain, all those types of things. Start tracking and logging and recording, and then that way you can use those to build your player profile or resume. And then I would say is start the process of visiting college campuses unofficially, right? So like if you go traveling to a tournament and there happens to be a school that's that's near the location of the tournament, and you have a little free time, go walk through the campus with, your parents or whatever. And that way you can kind of see if you like it or not, right? Because that's the other thing. And then, start doing the whole college ID or summer camps, whether it's a multi-coach type ID camp run by, whatever organizations, or we offer one as a club in the summer as well. But, or go to the school specific summer camp. Like if you're set on, let's say, UMKC or Notre Dame or whatever school it might be, because that's where your parents went, that's your whole grandfather went, whatever it may be, start signing up for their camps, at the end of your freshman year. Start creating this broad list of schools, colleges that you're interested in, right? And a lot of it is just dependent on the various factors for your family, you personally. Just create this kind of priority list of what you're looking for. Have an idea, okay? So now you're in as a sophomore, 10th grade. Again, you still coaches can't contact you at the NCAA D1, 2 level until after June 15. But you need to always think about, following your academic plan and taking the appropriate courses. Start by registering for either the NCAA Eligibility Center or there's the NAIA. Is there a junior college? No. So there's these eligibility centers where, they just want to know that you're taking the appropriate classes, you're, doing everything that you need to do to be eligible for whatever level you're looking at. Take the PSAT. It's a good practice for you. Taking standardized tests. I know some kids, you guys aren't maybe that comfortable taking standardized tests. So just it's practice, right? Update your athletic and academic achievements, right? Create a player profile or a resume. Start doing that. That way you can update it as you accomplish more, but you have something to send to college coaches. And just find out more, attend college fairs so that you have an idea what, different colleges and levels and whatever might offer you. You start narrowing down that broad list that you created as a freshman, and you review that list, and maybe you start, narrowing it down a little bit. I would go to different schools that you're still interested in. Usually on their website, there is some link to complete a recruiting questionnaire. It goes into a database, and it's there pretty much for a while, forever, unless the coaching staff goes in and deletes that database. So to start by going to, and filling that out. I know for me, we have a alert email that comes up when somebody fills our questionnaire, and I see the name, right? So start putting your name out there, in other words, right? Email, contact college coaches from the list that you've narrowed down a little bit, right? Make sure that the information you provide is, kind of simple but brief. Make sure you put in your graduation year, especially for the NCAA. If we know you're a sophomore, freshman, sophomore, like, we know not to respond to you, right? Because if we do, then we have to self-report, and then it becomes this whole issue, right? But other than that, like, just, put your game schedule, whether it's tournaments or your season, if you're in different platforms, leagues, whether it's ECNL, showcase tournaments, or, whatever, state cup, those things. And make sure you put your contact information as well. Continue to visit college campuses. These are unofficial visits that you take and you look at, right? And then again, continue to attend college ID or summer camps so that you always get in front of college coaches. All right, now you're getting into that kind of period where it becomes a little more serious, because now NCAA Division I, II coaches can start communicating with you, talk to you. So your junior year, continue your academic track of taking the required courses, making sure you're going to be eligible. Start submitting your kind of unofficial or official high school transcripts to the different, NCAA and NAIA eligibility center at the end of the junior year. And then again, test scores no longer necessarily for the initial eligibility for NCAA, but again, if a lot of times, in order to get financial aid, scholarships, and awards, there is some type of a requirement if they're merit-based, meaning you have a minimum GPA and a minimum test score. So in order to qualify for those, you should probably still take these standardized tests. And then again, attend college fairs just to get an exposure and an idea of more colleges out there. Here's something else. Now you need to start probably developing kind of a financial plan for college, right? Based on various factors of your, academic successes or lack of, other type of private scholarships, need-based, because there's, just because you don't have money, there's various things where it's Pell Grants or, that are out there that you could qualify for. So you just need to know what's out there that you might qualify for. A lot of times I would tell you that there's, things like you would never think of, but like Evergy. I had a player ask me to write a letter of recommendation because he was applying for an Evergy college scholarship. Gave him like $1,000 per year. But apparently the high bills that I see on my utility bill, that's where some of it goes to, because they were a customer, they were able to qualify for this, right? So there's all kinds of opportunities out there as far as private money and scholarships. You just need to find it. Continue to contact college coaches. Make sure you start including your player profile, your schedule, so that coaches can start coming out and specifically targeting. For men, this is probably the year that they're going to target your junior year to start identifying you. The women's game, it's like freshman, sophomore years. But for the men, typically it's going to be kind of your junior year. So this is an important year in the recruiting process for you. I would suggest you attend college soccer camps at this point, right? You need to get out in front. So the summer before your junior year, you need to think about going to a specific school's college camp. Get out in front of the staff. That way they know, hey, we can start following you your junior season in whether it's high school or club, whatever it may be. And then continue to visit college campuses, right? After August 1 of your junior year, you can technically start doing unofficial visits where you can meet and be given a tour of campus and other things with the college coaching staff. Okay, so before your freshman, junior year, when you go visit schools, you cannot talk to the college coaches, right? At the NCAA level. At the Ncaa junior college, they can talk, they can meet, they can, do whatever they want. So, all right, so now it's your senior year. You continue to take challenging classes that meet the eligibility requirements. If you need to retake any standardized tests, do so. You need to complete what's called FAFSA, which is basically a free application for federal student aid. Everybody needs to fill one of these out, regardless whether you think you qualify for free federal money or not. Everybody needs to fill it out. I would suggest that you complete the schools that you're really like. Now, by this time, you're like got a list of maybe 5, maybe 10 schools that you're really interested in. I would go ahead and fill out their college applications just to make sure that you would be accepted, right? Especially if you're going to a high academic school like and specifically like D3 schools, but a lot of Ncaa schools as well, they have their private schools, so they have different standards for eligibility or acceptance into those schools. So go ahead and start filling out maybe your application so that you know you've been accepted, and now you can kind of deal with the finances or whatever as you talk to the athletic or soccer programs. You can now set up official visits as well, and you're limited to 5 visits, 1 per institution. So we'll talk about kind of how each level sets up their official visits and when they might do that as well. And then for the NCAA, you got to complete a final amateurism towards the end of it's before like April of your senior year, so that we know you didn't play professional soccer and get paid or whatever, so that the NCAA clears you as well. And after you graduate, you definitely need to make sure that your school submits your final official transcripts, which shows that you graduated from a high school in the United States, and all the different courses, you meet the academic requirements. Okay. All right, that was kind of quick. Again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to add it into the chat and Adam will monitor. But we will continue to kind of go on, right? So all said and done, your high school career, players, you just need to think about being the best student that you can be during high school, right? And then from an athletics perspective, you just need to make sure that you ask from your, when you're young, so you have time to work on these things. You need to ask somebody that will provide you honest feedback as far as your playing ability. If there are things that you feel you need to work on, you need to develop a plan that intentionally works on those deficiencies, right? And make areas that you're not as good at become, strengths for you. One of the suggestions is you need to train and play all the time. Like if there is a college coach out there watching you, you just never know, right? So there's basically recently this past weekend, there was a ECNL event, and there was a Division I college coach that was at that event, just walked up because they saw these games going on. They were there because on the other fields at a complex, their son was, his son was playing, but he noticed, the uniforms or whatever, and came over to watch that game. Unattended for them, but they were there. Nobody would have expected that coach to be there, right? So you just never know when there will be eyes on you, okay? And then lastly, you need to be careful about, how you portray yourself, especially on social media, right? You can't just say and post and do whatever that's out there on social media. It's public, it becomes public, it's a record. And in this, day and age, you just never know. Again, I know from a college perspective, we investigate not only, we like you as a soccer player, we look at your academics to see if you can get into our school, but then we try to find out more about you as a person. Are you going to fit our team culture, right? Are you going to be somebody responsible, or are you going to, be a problem? And trust me, we don't want problem, right? We don't like problems, because that just takes away from what we love to do, which is train and work on, getting better. So, all right. So it leads to this idea, the notion of branding yourself as a recruit, as a player, as a person. How do you make yourself marketable in the recruiting process? So social media, that's a big part of it, right? And it's not just what you post, it's your parents, right? It's things like who you follow or like, right? The worst thing is when I look up a player and I see their screen name and you're like, OMG. So it's, you don't want your screen name or username for anything, your email, right? It can't be something that is, that doesn't really portray who you are as a person, right? So you might think it's funny at the time, but it's really probably not. It's going to bite you in the end, okay? Other things that we look at, right? When we see you at a game or training, right? Your body language is huge, right? Like if your coach is talking to you, are you looking at your coach when he's speaking or he or she is speaking, right? Or, are you doing your own thing? Are you even in the huddle, right? I mean, all these things we look at because a lot of it, yeah, we want really good soccer players, but we also need you to fit into as a good person that's going to represent our program, our university, right? And everything else. So how are you perceived by your coaches, whether it's club, high school, other sports, right? And your teammates. Those are all things that you need to think about as far as your branding and how you're going to be marketable or not. I will warn all the parents, right? There are players that college coaches have not recruited, even though they may be good, because of behaviors on the sideline. So just be aware that honestly, you're not helping your child, right? You're actually doing more damage or harm if you are behaving in a way where screaming, yelling at the referee, yelling at the opponents, the kids on the fields, his teammates. Those are all things that we look at because, again, how are you perceived? That's the biggest thing. Okay. And then the last thing is are you a good teammate? Because if you're not, how are you going to fit into a college setting, especially if you're going away from home, right? That might be your first time where you've had to, spend extended time away from, your family, your parents, so how are you going to act in that setting? Well, we look at how you act with your teammates, referees, coaches, everybody involved, right? So this is your brand. This is how you're going to market yourself. And fair or unfair, right? It's not necessarily a reflection of who you are, but that's how maybe others perceive or see you, right? And again, perception sometimes, is not necessarily reality, but it comes across that way, right? Especially if we don't really truly know you and we're just taking little snapshots when we watch you play or watch you interact, okay? All right, other things in terms of considering in order to build your brand, right? So a suggestion would be to create a soccer specific, whether it's Instagram or Twitter account. Make sure your name, club, team uniform number, and all that grad year is in your account name. Make your personal accounts private, but then these accounts you need to make public, right? Create a 1-minute video where you introduce yourself, right? Talk about your position that you play, the team, why you want to play college soccer, etc. Right? Gives us an idea of who you are, right? And then make sure you pin it to the top of your profile. Your profile bio needs to include the basic information that we need, right? So club, team, uniform number, high school, grad year, your contact info, your email, and your coach's email, right? Link your social media accounts to every email you send to college coaches. That way we have the ability to not only just read the email, but then, go to this, see your bio, your introduction, and be able to get an idea, initial sense of who you are, right? And then that will give us an idea if we want to continue researching or pursuing you as a recruit. So obviously, yes, try to create individual highlight clips, right? Positive posts where you're liking, supporting, whatever. But also it doesn't have to be all about soccer, right? So balance soccer posts with things that are important to you as far as your life and your values, okay? Make sure you be yourself, show your personality. I mean, the big question is would you want to recruit and sign you if you're watching that post, right? Don't post anything with any type of questionable content or references, right? Especially, alcohol, drugs, those things. So again, you're putting yourself out there in the public forum, make sure it's appropriate and positive. Be careful who you interact with and what you send via DMs or, whatever it is. Just make sure that it's going to portray your true self rather than just thinking it's, it may be funny, but in the long run, you don't need to, always repost or retweet or like, and especially if it's questionable content, okay? Things to follow, it'd be kind of like your club accounts. Follow different college programs that you're interested in. Follow the college coaches, right? Find that way you get a sense of who they are and what kind of program they're running based on their social media presence, right? Follow teammates, right? Or players you admire or like or want to emulate, right? Follow school accounts like your high school program, follow them. Whatever it may be, but the accounts you follow also kind of show, is it all about you or is it about, the program or the thing, different organizations you're involved or interested in. So keep that in mind. So now you get to that point where you want to send some emails, right? And start contacting colleges. It's simple enough, right? Especially through Gmail or whatever. Create like a soccer specific professional email address. So your name, first and last, your graduation year, and then at Gmail, right? In the subject line, make sure your first name, last name, grad year, position, and club or high school team is on there. Personalized to the coach you are sending this to. So nothing like dear coach, and I read maybe the first sentence and I delete if it doesn't interest me, right? So the other thing when you personalize is make sure it's the current coach. If I get an email of the previous coach, then, no, delete. And then make sure you spell their name right. Make sure it's short and direct. We don't need an essay. We're not trying to, we don't have that much time. We get a lot of emails and other things that we have to do. So, don't just create basic facts, relevant information, schedule, things like that, and why you might be a good fit for the program, right? And then the accounts you created, social media, whether it's Instagram or whatever it is, make sure you link those in this email. Okay. Do some research about the school, about the soccer program, about, and make sure that explain why that school, that program is, you're interested in them, right? Again, put your name, put your grad year so that we know immediately whether we can respond or not, right? And make sure that you're the one sending it. Parents, nothing like an email that, talks about your child from you. We're not going to interact with parents. I think if players send their own email, create their own, social media accounts or whatever, then it shows us that they're willing to, do a little bit of work. And again, that's a reflection of who you are. When we get emails talking, from parents about their children, obviously, yeah, you're going to be their biggest advocate and fan. So, it's not necessarily kind of, it's a very biased perception of the player and their abilities. So,
I would probably stress that quite a bit, that the email needs to come from the players, not from the parents.
yeah, so. Again, what are the most relevant things to make it kind of short, concise, all these things, right? So we've already kind of mentioned those things. Some of the things, right? Make sure, again, you provide upcoming schedules, events, or tournaments, so we have opportunities to see you. Make sure you have your contact info, cell number, blah, 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 coaches, right? Email, cell phone, that's helpful. This is where you probably want to make sure you have some type of like a highlight video, right? And then kind of just throw in, plans for maybe when you're going to be around or visit the college if possible or applicable, right? So this leads to that highlight video. So we've had a few questions about that, right? It's a great recruiting tool, especially this past couple of years during the pandemic, when we couldn't get out, right? Or if you're farther away from the school where the coaches can't get out because it's not local, recruiting video, highlight videos is very beneficial, right? In it, try to limit yourself to maybe 25 to 30 plays, depending on how long those plays are. Keep it generally within like 3 to 5 minutes. Like it gets longer than 5 minutes, it gets repetitive, and we're not gonna, no matter how much like music you put in there and the different, hip hop or whatever it is you put in there, we're really after 5 minutes, you've lost us.
Unless it's good music, I'll listen to a video or watch a video if there's good music.
What do you consider good music?
Well, it just depends what mood I'm in.
There you go.
Country.
Oh my God. So make sure that, that you're not repeating the same play, right? Like if you're good in the air and you're able to like score with off of headers and off of corner kicks and set plays, we get it after like 5 to 8 of those clips. We don't need to show us all like 15 goals you scored off of headers, okay? Stack most of your plays at the beginning. So like really high, blow us away in the first, 20 to 30 seconds. So we're like, oh, okay. And then we will watch the video. So besides the music, you got to have the content to make us stay and watch the rest. And try to, make sure that you showcase your absolute best if you can, and make sure it's all phases of the game, right? Even as a attacker forward, like show us some of your defending clips where you're chasing some outside back down and winning a ball and then starting a counter attack or whatever, right? So it's not just about you scoring or in possession. It's also when you're defending and out of possession, right? So we're not going to go through all these. Again, we will send the PDF of this so you can kind of see, but just think about like in the highlight videos, depending on the position, right? What are some things that we want to see you able to do? I think for goalkeepers, one of the big things is, your ability to play with the ball at your feet. Nowadays, it's very crucial in the modern game that we have goalkeepers that are comfortable to, distribute with their feet. It's not just about punting the ball over half field, right? Defenders, it's about getting into the attack, especially if you're an outside back, right? I mean, yeah, basic 1v1 defending and all that kind of stuff is great, but what do you do in possession to help us in the attack, right? So again, kind of, you can look at the different positions in the PDF of these so that you can kind of put together the best clips, right? Okay, so this leads to how do you market yourself? How do you kind of get yourself out there as well? So you've branded yourself, you created this brand, this thing that portrays who you are and you as a soccer player, you as a person. but now you also need to get out there and showcase your abilities, right? So ID camps, great recruiting tool. All of us, we've done camps not only from our college programs on campus, but off campus, we go and do these camps, ID camps that have multiple colleges at them, right? When you're going to attend these camps, make sure you email the coaches that you're of the schools you're interested in ahead of time, right? If someone's working that, definitely follow up, within 24 hours afterwards. Just, say thanks for working with me or whatever. If you have feedback, idea, whatever it may be, but follow up and try to reconnect with them. General ID camps, right? Like ours that we offered in the summer, we have multiple college coaches there. You just need to make sure that at some point there's some aspect of a full field game within those. If all you're like, being like at an indoor ID camp where all you're doing is like 5v5, that's not going to really help college coaches to assess you overall, right? So make sure that those ID camps, you're going to end up, you have the numbers and you have the ability to play larger numbers, right? But it's essentially, once you've kind of narrowed down your top 5, let's say, schools and programs that you're interested in, you have to go to their camps. You don't have to. It's highly suggested you do, because now you're going to be on campus. You're going to get a better idea of the coaching staff and what they're coaching, how they coach, the style that they want to play and what they emphasize, right? So you get a way better idea of a particular school's, coaching and style, and even a lot of these camps, they even have maybe college players that will be there working and then jumping in during some of the sessions as well. So, all right, when you go on these visits, whether you're at a camp or you're talking to a college coach, again, we're not going to go through all these, but just here are some questions, ideas of different aspects that you should ask, right? Ask questions about the current team or the upcoming team, right? About the coaching style, their schedule, so on, right? In particular, right, like as a college student athlete, you want to know what does a competitive season, what's a calendar look like throughout the year as a college student athlete, right? What do you guys do in the off season, right? What's the travel look like? How does that fit into the academic, needs and requirements, right? Like, can I miss a practice because I have a lab or a class or whatever, So these are all questions you should ask as well. As a recruit and within the whole process of that recruiting process, right? I mean, ask like, are they looking at how many other kids that are playing your position are they looking at, right? Probably the financial aspect is going to be another big, for some of them, some of you, that's going to be a crucial kind of, decision process. So you need to know and be aware of all the different opportunities, right? All right. So I'm at that point where I'm sure our coaches, thank them for being here, but they're tired of hearing me. You're tired of hearing me. So we will get to the portion now where the college coaches are going to talk for themselves. And I will leave this screen up with the questions. You're not going to be able to see them, but at the beginning, we'll have them kind of just say their name as they talk about their program or about answering the questions. So some of them can't talk about their program. So the first virtual Q&A that was asked, right? How do college coaches initially identify potential student athletes for their program? So Jeff, if you want to start first, maybe.
Once again, my name is Jeff Coleman with Johnson County Community College. It starts like we talked about in one of the slides earlier, during their junior year, the evaluation process starts then, identifying players, and then, watching them, develop throughout their junior year, and then bringing them in maybe into their senior year for an unofficial visit. But that usually is when we start identifying, potential student athletes for our program.
I'll go. I think it all starts with talent. This is Ryan Poor with UMKC, and I think it all starts with talent. Talent can be identified as athletic. It can be identified as academic talent. It can be identified as character talent. So I think there has to be something talented about you. Obviously, there's a lot of soccer players, not only in this country, but in the world. And we're identifying talent and what that means to our program, whether it fits academically, athletically, or socially. And I believe it starts with that and then branches to many other factors.
Yeah, this is Kevin from MNU. I think both of those are really good points. And the key here, I think, for me is you need to understand how many recruits contact us every day. And so a lot of times the identification process for us is, did you contact us? We have, we can go out to fields and watch hundreds and hundreds of players, but typically if you see us out there, we're typically watching those players who took the initiative to write a good email, to do some research on their own, and they've actually taken the recruiting process and they have ownership of it. None of us struggle to find players. We actually struggle to identify the players who already contact us. That is a full-time job in and of itself. And so having, a young man reach out, be personable, follow up with an email, give us a schedule, give us the opportunity to understand that they're interested. That is, a way that identification happens. Probably more so than some random game where I go stand on the sideline and magically discover a kid I like.
But be proactive with this. Like Kevin's talking about, come up to us, after your match and just introduce themselves. I know there's rules at the NCAA level, but they're called bumps and everything, but you can just say hi and everything and move on from there. But, take the initiative and just introduce yourself and also thank us for coming out and taking the time to watch you perform.
And I think one of the biggest things is it's a misconception of the college coach just being the soccer coach. But I think some reason we got into this profession is to build relationships. And like these guys say, if the player's not proactive, they're not responsible, if they don't want to build that relationship, which, and quite honestly, is getting harder and harder these days behind a social media or a screen or text message. We want to see the personality and character behind each player. And it's a big reason why I like coaching, is building relationships with the players.
That also goes back to like that one slide where we talked about who's emailing us. It needs to come from the player itself and not from the parents.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll go to the next one. So the question that was submitted was, is there a particular platform, whether it's ECNL, MLS Next, or the National League Pro, and or is there certain clubs you might target or start with, certain tournaments or showcases, right? So that college coaches prefer to start that identifying of potential recruits.
I think this one's probably gonna differ for every coach. It's probably a personal choice as a college coach on what you prefer and how you prefer to recruit. My answer to that is I don't care. If you can play and you're a good kid, and I think you're going to help our program, and my university is going to be a great place for you to develop and grow as a young man and a soccer player, and have that 4 years be a rewarding 4 years in your life that you talk about the rest of your life. Where you play, what level you play, what club you play for, what platform you play in, that is secondary. And it's not something that I pay attention to until I get to a point where maybe I'm having to maybe evaluate you next to another kid. And maybe I've only got so much scholarship money left. And so now we're getting really, really picky in how we are determining which kid to offer. And then maybe at that point, we might look at the experience that you have as a youth player to determine, what level did you play at and what types of matches were you in? Maybe if it's the club who coached you. So we tend to know what coaches do a good job in developing players. And so maybe it gets to that point once you refine it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not particular on what level you play at or what, particular platform or anything like that. Like this, this past weekend, there were ECNL matches, ECNL regional league matches. They had ODP friendlies. And, I was like a chicken with my head cut off, going to all these different events this weekend. So it, like Kevin talked about, if you're a quality individual with high character and with a lot of potential that could, help us in the long run, then we're going to be out trying to find you at wherever you're playing at, whatever, it doesn't matter what platform.
Yeah, I think we could sit here and argue this question for probably the full night, but I mean, I do think obviously college coaches have limited time and resources. Obviously, we try to make the most of our recruiting experience. Are there different tiers on that board? Yes, I do believe there are different tiers. Can players make it college in those tiers? Absolutely. So we will always, as a program, try to maximize our time and resources. So does that allow us maybe to go to MLS Next, where there's 200 teams playing an event? Maybe ECNL has another 100. Maybe some of these other tournaments are 30, 40. So I'll let you do the math. If I can go watch 200 teams, I'll go watch 200 teams. If I can go watch 100 teams, I'll go watch 100 teams. So I don't think there's a huge issue in recruiting anyone from any level. But I do think there's tiers in which we go about things.
Good. Thank you. All right. So talking about different platforms or levels. So the question is, what are ways that you look for talent or potential recruits at the high school level?
In terms of a high school team?
Yeah. Like, what's the purpose of going to a high school game for you?
Well, I think so. It's actually a good question. So earlier this year, I went to watch Sporting Kansas City at 9 a.m. Played at Rio Grande, and it was no intensity, no atmosphere in the game. And then later that day at noon, I went and watched a quarterfinal high school game, and there was maybe 1,200 people there, students chanting, just a totally different atmosphere. And so I think you can learn things from each atmosphere. In the high school one there, in that case, maybe it's playing under a little bit of pressure in an environment. Maybe in the sporting game, it was kids not playing in a great environment. How can they pick themselves up? So I think they're all pieces of the puzzle. And, I went to a few high school games this year. I went to obviously some sporting games. I went to some ECNL games. So they're all just part of the puzzle.
I think at the high school level, you're also playing with a lot of pride.
Yeah.
And that's important because obviously when you go to play at UMKC or MNU, I mean, you're going to be playing for that institution. There's a lot of pride involved in that. But we as coaches know that when you play for your high school, that you may not be playing in the correct position that you are with your club team. And that's you're probably the best athlete on your team. Like I was trying to recruit a kid as a goalkeeper. Well, he happens to be the best athlete on the team, so he played as their ninth this past year and became an all-state striker. I mean, so there's stories like that where the best center back obviously is the up on top and playing as a forward or vice versa. So we understand what we're getting into when we go and recruit at the high school level, but we want to see how you interact with your high school teammates, your high school coaches. That way we just get a better evaluation of you.
Nothing more to be said.
Having coached at high school teams at the high school level, I will say that there's probably more expectations, rules to follow at the high school level than at the club level. Because there's academic requirements to that. And then as Ryan mentioned, like you're playing in front of your peers under the lights. You get like newspapers and media following and writing things with your name, like, you know, Jeff Cole scored the game winner against their rival that night, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is a purpose for high school, because we're trying to find out more about you as a total person, you know. And you also at high school games, you have fans that yell things maybe against you, and how do you react to that, right? So I think there's definitely a purpose to that, to high school soccer. All right, so how important is the success of the team versus the talent of the individual on that team in that recruiting process?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we are a team sport, right? And so I think that's what matters the most. And most of the time, if there's a good team, there's going to be good individuals on that team. So I think team success obviously helps. But just as we've said before, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end all be all. You know, individual success can come out of not very good teams. But I do think team success matters a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say the one thing that separates the men's recruiting from the women's recruiting is that there are guys that get to us their freshman year in college who are still growing. They're late bloomers. And so they may not have been on the top club team because their body wasn't developed yet. They were just, you know, basically a kid that, you know, went through a growth spurt late, potentially is even doing it in college. And in my time doing this, I've seen those kids absolutely flourish at the college level. When I see those kids, we call them baby deer. They don't even know what their own body looks like. And when you find those kids with a little bit of raw talent, they've learned to fight and they've got grit. They've had to overcome maybe a lack of size, a lack of speed, whatever it is. A lot of times those kids end up being really, really nice players for us, you know, junior, senior year. So I do think I agree with Ryan there that the success of the team typically points towards, you know, better players. But, you know, I would just say this, if you're not on the top team in your club right now, that doesn't mean that you can't find an opportunity for yourself. And so I think really it comes down to, again, you taking hold of this process. And if you want to play, find a place that will give you that opportunity, man, and work your butt off.
I've also, you know, been out to watch matches, and, you know, we've all been in these situations where we just, you know, our team just doesn't have it on the day, and we're getting beat 3-4-0 or something like that. But you know, when I'm out seeing, I want to see how this particular student athlete responds to adversity like that. You know, what kind of character do they have? Are they going to really try to build up their teammates and maybe try to get back into the match, or is this an opportunity for them just to go after the rest of their teammates and be really negative? So as a coach, you're looking at that saying, okay, do I want to bring on that individual into my program? You know, because we're going to be in games where, hey, we may not have it on the day, and we're going to get, you know, maybe beat, you know, 2-3-0 or something like that. But are you going to help, you know, the rest of your teammates out? Are you going to be like maybe captain material, and really try to lead the rest of your teammates in trying to get, you know, a goal back or something like that? So, you know, there are times when sometimes I want to see how they're failing and how they respond to that.
So I would tell you this, my experience, and it's in the women's game more so, but I coached high school boys as well. So and even club teams. Just because you're on a team that wins state cup or regionals, don't think that makes you necessarily a good player, right? Like, you're part of that team, sure, but are you Division I level? Not necessarily. Conversely, if you're on a team that like didn't win that much, but you're the reason that that your team wins 5 out of 16 games, and you're getting the game winners and you're showing up when it's important, you know, then yes, like that, we're going to find the talent in that respect, right? And I think you get some different type of skills that you can develop, like leadership skills when you're the best player on a bad team versus I've seen numerous times where you're just part of the successful team and you get overshadowed or you defer responsibility to the quote unquote leaders or the best players on that team. So I think there's always a value to different things, right? As coaches that are trying to find the best players, we're going to find talent. We're going to identify talent and we're going to recruit talent, right? All right. So the next question. When should a potential recruit be reaching out to schools to start the recruiting process? We kind of went through it with the whole, freshman through senior your high school career, but some of the levels, it varies. So I will just let them quickly address like when it's important. So.
Yeah, I would say for the Division I level, it's getting a little later and later for boys. I would say beginning of their junior year is a good time frame to get on our radar. In terms of an introductory email, let us know any upcoming games, what level you're playing at, all those maybe necessary information you guys put on those slides. I do think the one thing maybe that wasn't on the slide that I would like to see is I think players need to go watch college games. I think too many kids maybe think they know what they can play at, but I also think there's not much different in terms of the levels even on this podium. I think that surprises a lot of people, whether it's Division I level or NAI level or junior college level. The differences might be a lot smaller than people think. And so, but that all starts with people going out and watch college soccer. I think that's, a thing that needs to be done a little bit more in the recruiting process.
I would add to what Brian just said. Definitely probably their junior. Like I got a couple emails just recently from 2024s, and I know they're good players, but they're still just sophomores. And they're not gonna get to me for another few years. So probably at the beginning of their junior, probably the best time to reach out to colleges.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for us. Junior year at the earliest. Anything earlier, I'm not organized enough. So that's the brutal truth.
I know Kevin won't mention this, but he had a Sports Center top 10, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you should have seen the goal. Holy cow. So one of his players, what was it? The
Second round.
Yeah.
Nationals.
second round of nationals.
Yeah.
Scored this
Banger.
unbelievable goal. So yes, having coached at NAIA level and now at Division I level, the men's game, there's very little difference. Like a good NAIA school versus a Division I school, there's very little difference, right? So, all right. So the next question: what are the primary skill stats recruiters look for in defensive positions, and then how does a defender get noticed or stand out for scholarships?
Well, as a 2 or a 3, as a wing back, obviously, you've got to be, good with 1v1 defending. Just depending how your team, whether it's high school or club, how they play. If you're being asked to get high into the attack and you're good from the flanks as far as your service and everything. And then central defenders, obviously defensive heading is a plus. How you're covering your other defensive teammates, and then obviously on set pieces and everything on the offensive end, I think as well. And then playing out of the back, because obviously that is our game now. When it starts with the goalkeeper and goes to the 4 or the 5, are you able to break lines with good penetrating passes and everything?
I think one of the things that's pretty false in today's modern game is that we as coaches value any one position over another. Stylistically, especially if you've moved into, playing a possession-based system, I can tell you for us, we'll spend as much time evaluating and identifying and picking apart a center back as we would a kid that's up top that's just banging in goals left and right. You know, we need both. We can get the 30-goal scorer and not be able to play out of the back because our defenders aren't technical enough, don't have enough tactical awareness. We're never raised in a system that allowed them to play. And so as kids, they were stuck in the back and told to smash it. We're not recruiting that kid. And so we will spend a ton of time in this modern game evaluating players at every single position. And I really don't think there's one position that's more valuable than another. And so if you're a defender and you want to get noticed, I would hope that you would be noticed in the system that you play in, right? If you play for a coach who's asking you to drive the ball 80 meters every time you get it, you'll do that. I won't recruit you. And that's okay because someone else will. But I don't know if I understand the question, but I think you could literally say 4 defensive positions, 4 midfield positions, for strikers, for keepers. I think we're going to go about a process that's very, very similar for any of those kids. And for me, a defender doesn't have to work harder to get noticed.
Yeah, I think it leads to probably a more broad point in terms of the whole style of play thing. You know, so I saw that on the slide a few times, and I'll be honest, if a recruit comes to me and his top 3 questions are what kind of style of play do you have, like that's a huge negative to me. It is, because at the end of the day, I'm in the business of trying to win games.
Yeah.
And maybe the day is 20 miles an hour wind with a terrible surface. Well, guess what? I'm probably not going to try to play out the back that day. I'm going to play a little bit more direct. And if you look at me like I'm crazy, well, again, I'm here to win games. So I think you got to be careful of always getting taught, hey, what's the style of play? What's the coach's style of play? What's the coach? I want competitive kids. So I think for me, especially the defensive side, is you don't have the numbers, you don't have goals, assists to calculate on guys, but I can really tell a kid if it's competitive. You know, I can tell if a kid wants to shut his guy down 1v1 defensively. I can see the guy's personality, how he communicates to his teammates. So I think there's like Kevin said, I think there's a large portion of we value defenders just as much as we do attacking players, and everything goes into recruiting those players.
One thing, like, you know, what I talk to my players about quite a bit is there's a massive difference now between high school and club and college. And at the collegiate level, like Ryan just talked about, unfortunately, it's a results-driven industry, and it's all about results right now. And we can get let go from our positions if we're not winning games. And like Ryan talked about, if the surface is bad, you know, you're playing into a wind, you know, we're going to have to go. And if we're going to lose possession, it's going to be 60, 70 yards from our goal. I mean, that's just the way it is. And maybe we can get a turnover there and get a ball in the back of the net and we win 1-0. But we won the game. But it's a results-driven industry, and that's just the nature of the beast. But sometimes we have to have conversations with our players about that, you know, I hope you understand this, that, you know, maybe your high school coach has been there 20 years, you play at the same club coach since you're 10 years old. But if I don't get results, then I'm not going to be here.
And I think that's the important thing is there's always context. It's not always one set thing, right? But for me, one of the things is, you know, defenders, specifically defenders, you're never not going to get beat ever, right? Like it's not 100%, you're never going to get beat 1v1. It's about what do you do afterwards when you get beat? When somebody gets behind you, what do you do? Right. And that to me is a big, and it's a mindset. It's a competitive mindset of, so I think there's no like, yeah, if we could get somebody that never gets beat, great. But that's not reality. So I think that applies for, like you said, you guys said, it's all positions. There's certain things, right? So, all right. What are the experiences to be a student athlete in college? Like what do you see as challenges for them? And then what are potential benefits or positives for them as student athletes?
Yeah, I definitely think there's both, right? I think the positives, you got a built-in family that you're with on a consistent basis. You have built-in resources, whether it's a free tutoring, academic services, extra meals, whatever it is, there's extra resources available to student athletes. Obviously, the negatives with that comes more time and more time commitment. You're missing class for traveling. You're spending time training, extra training. But, you know, I think the student athlete that's organized, that's open-minded, that can understand those pros and cons are the ones that flourish in our environment. And they got to be proactive, right? I mean, we're in a setting where we're not babysitting. And if the college athletes can't be proactive to use those resources, well, then they're doing no good. So again, I think it comes back to being responsible and proactive in the process. And those are main attributes we look for.
I think some of the challenges, I mean, there's a lot of structure at whatever level you go to and what institution you go to. You've got, you know, your class schedule, you've got study hall, you've got strength and conditioning, and you've got training sessions. Sometimes freshmen, there's usually a small percentage of that, like sometimes they'll hit like a brick wall, probably about late October, when it just becomes a lot for them. And because you know, obviously they're coming off club and high school where there's not that much demand, and maybe you're, you know, in the heat of the battle where we need to get a result. I mean, this is conference season by then, and so that can be a challenge sometimes. It's trying to, you know, because it's every single day, but you're with your family all the time. But that can be one of the challenges. But you know, that's only like a small percentage of that I've seen of like freshmen that hit that kind of like that freshman wall like late October. But the positive, like Brian talked about, I mean, but you're around your family members to help you get through that. And then from an academic standpoint, there's so many resources available, regardless of what institution you go to and what level, for student athletes, that it's really, really difficult for a student athlete to fail. And if you are failing, it's 100% on the person itself and on the student athlete, because they're not being proactive, and they're just basically probably not just doing the work.
Yeah, I think the challenges these coaches have talked about are real, and I don't think they're any more difficult than the challenges you're going to face in life. I think probably the biggest thing, and I think we would all say it, if you pick the right school and you go to the right place and you get this opportunity to play college soccer for 4 years, it is an absolutely unbelievable experience. I mean, there is nothing like it. And I've said this so many times, I'm too old now to say it realistically, but I would give anything to go back and be able to play just one more year. It goes so fast, but it is so rewarding. There are so many things that you get out into life, and life kind of hits you in the face, and you know, you look back and you realize that moment and what that experience was. There's nothing like it. And for me, the positives so far outweigh the challenges. And I think as these coaches were saying, the one thing with the challenges is you've got an entire family, a body, a support system around you. But man, I think that's why these recruiting talks are unbelievable for you guys that are watching and listening, because the whole point of what I just said is finding the right school. Your experience can be tainted in an unbelievably quick way if you don't do the work on the front end to find the space that really fits you. But yeah, the positives far outweigh the challenges for me.
But you hear, like, whether you're a senior in high school or, you know, the senior speeches, you know, in college, or with us, you know, the sophomore speeches, they talk about all the time is that these 4 years, these two years go so fast, to cherish them and be grateful and be thankful, because these relationships that you build are going to last you longer than probably the relationships you built when you're in high school. I mean, I'm still, you know, connected to many of my college teammates more than than my high school friends. And so the relationships you build in college are going to be with you for a lifetime.
Good. All right. So the next question says, is it common to have walk-on tryout or sessions? prior to the season? And do you have opportunities for walk-on at your college program or at general college?
I think that's largely dependent on the level you're at. You know, Division I, probably a lot less opportunity for walk-on tryouts. I know Division II do have a 2-hour tryout period. I'm not sure in terms of junior college and Ncaa what their tryout policy is, but for us, you know, the tryout process would simply be you know, a week-long tryout in the spring, which is our non-competitive season. And those opportunities are very rare.
When I first got to Johnson County, I was at a 4-year institution prior to that for 8 years, and we couldn't do tryouts. And so when I got to Johnson County, they told me that we could. And so I was kind of taken aback about it. But in my opinion, if I'm doing my job correctly, then I don't need to have a tryout session or a process. I've got these, 10, 14 individuals that are come in and fill out my roster. And these are the kids that I've, spent time and effort recruiting and gotten to know them personally and also athletically, that these are the individuals that I want, and then my roster is full, and that I don't need to have a tryout. But, some institutions do it, and I know that, sometimes they'll find a needle in a haystack, and, but yeah, every program is different, every level is different. There are a lot of different rules in regards to tryouts and everything.
Yeah, we don't do walk-on tryout sessions. Everything that we do is in the recruiting process. At the Ncaa level, one of the, I think, big advantages we have in the recruiting process is you can actually train with us. So you can, as a recruit, when you come on a visit, you can actually train twice with us. And there's nothing like that. So if you can get onto campus and get with the team and go through a proper session, that for us is a massive, massive tool to not only help with evaluation and identification, but it helps us to see you in a really, really, really uncomfortable environment and how you deal with it. And we get to see with it in context to our guys who are already there. And so that's kind of what we're able to do. And we do that as many times as possible.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes, we all utilize walk-ons in our program. I think the biggest difference is those guys are recruited walk-ons.
Yes.
Right, rather than tryout walk-ons. I would say the tryout walk-on is very rare. A recruited walk-on we utilize every year.
So yes, I think the recruited walk-ons there are who are attending basically for free.
Correct.
Or they don't receive financial aid, athletic financial aid. But as far as like holding tryouts or walk-on tryouts on campus, yeah, very minimal, if at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, as a club coach, what can I do to help my team in the recruiting process? What are the steps that should be taken to help the players?
Let me start with this one, because this was a pet peeve of mine this past weekend. Unfortunately, it was not this club. But I was watching a match, and some players really caught my eye and everything. So I went up to the club coach and I asked him for a player profile sheet, and they said we don't have one. So if I'm a parent, as one of those players, and a college coach is there to see, my team play and my son's team play, and there's no information for the club to give to the college coach, then that's a problem. And so then I had to go back and send an email to the boys director and ask for a player profile sheet so I can get some information on these players. But the club right then and there is doing a disservice to that team and those players, because they didn't have the information that I was wanting, so I could go and try and start the recruiting process. So that was a massive pet peeve. So make sure that you have a player profile sheet, regardless of where you go. And there's a parent that's been labeled to come around, and we all go to numerous recruiting events, and there's always a parent that comes around and gives us player profile sheets. And when this is what we need in order to start the recruiting process. I think it's vital, and on all the information is current.
So before Kevin continues, we just had our college showcase night last week. So if you should ask your club coach, your team coach, if there is a team profile brochure, because we as a club offer a template for them to fill out with all the information that college coaches need. So ask your team coach if there is one for a high school age level team. And then, as Jeff mentions, as things change, you can update whatever, but
And on the player profile sheet, make sure it's, I mean, this is my pet peeve, but make sure it's numerical. Don't go alphabetical. Because next thing I'm trying to find, I see number 5, and then I'm like, oh, well, 5, oh, it's on the back side. I mean, I don't know their last name at that point. I mean, I just want to see his number right away.
and being a college coach, you got to make it dummy,
Yeah,
like simple as possible.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Kevin,
I think the role of the club coach, I think, is increasingly important in this culture that we currently live in. Here's the deal, 17 and 18-year-old boys, they don't listen to their parents. It doesn't matter how much they know. I've been a college coach for over 25 years. I have daughters. And when it comes to the college recruiting process, they don't even listen to me. So I think as a club coach, if you meet with your players and begin to engage them in conversations about college, especially if you're familiar with the college level, you can build an Excel spreadsheet file very quickly with your players on that roster. And next to that, you can have, what majors they're interested in listed, how geography, how far away from home are they willing to go? What size of school do they want? What level are they looking to play? What's the different things that maybe, and that Excel spreadsheet over the course of, 1 or 2 years, say junior and senior year, may change and tweak a bit. But what it does is it begins to engage that young man into thinking about their future, and their parents will absolutely love you for it because they've been trying to do that and they've been talking to the wall. So having that availability, and then when they have that sheet and those conversations happen, when a college coach, when I approach that club coach and I ask about a kid, they immediately talk about that kid in an informed manner. And that really helps me. Like I said at the beginning of this thing, we don't need help getting players into our emails, into our files. There are so many players wanting to be recruited right now. Any type of advantage that you can have to separate yourself away from the masses. And it could be as simple as I walk up and ask about number 5, and your club coach begins to talk to me in an informed manner that makes me understand that they're invested in that kid's life. And that can really change things for me because I walk away with a lot of information. The vice versa is what Jeff just said. You're frustrated. And I'm telling you, you get frustrated as a college coach, it's next. And it sounds bad, but that's the way it works. I mean, the very next day, we're going to have another kid coming through on an email that replaces that kid that we got frustrated with because we couldn't find a simple name. We couldn't get any information on them. And, good for coach for going back and emailing the director because that's a whole different step to go find that kid's information. I'm not sure I do that.
I mean, you're just doing a disservice to your player if you don't have that information for us.
Yeah, both great points. And it needs to be updated information because like I said earlier, I mean, we have limited time and resources. So if we're sitting there watching a 90-minute game and then we go up to the coach or maybe the team manager and we find out that kid's already committed, well, then we just maybe wasted 90 minutes of a game we could spend watching another game. So,
or he wants astronomical engineering,
exactly, which exactly, which we don't even offer or whatever. But I think it's a great point. I definitely think it's going back to what Kevin said in terms of the club coach specifically. I think they need to be meeting with their players. Obviously, this club does a good job with you, Mark, and understanding the recruitment process. But I'm always going to call the club coach.
Yeah.
I'm not calling you, Mark. I'm calling the club coach. And if he doesn't have any information to provide me on the player, well, that's a big red flag for not only the coach, but the club. And it's unfortunately goes notice to the player.
and I will add to what Kevin said is, so not only like what their major or area of study. I mean, I hate to say it, but I also need to know kind of like what their financial family situation is.
Yeah.
Because if if I need to provide more for this kid versus, I don't have to provide as much, or their academics, right? They qualify for other, academic merit-based financial award, then yeah, it can be great. So, well, appreciate it. All right, so we have Adam, we're at the end, but we have Adam with his long list of chat questions.
One really good question that came through. Is there a geographic range that you as a college coach will go to visit an athlete or watch an athlete?
Oh, watch, I was getting ready to say recruit. Yes, the world. Go. Yeah, I would say that's going to be back to what Ryan said earlier. That's our resources and our time are limited. And so we're going to try to be as efficient as we can. And so I would say, for me, if I'm traveling outside of 2 hours, especially here in Kansas City, we're very blessed to be in this city. And then with the international market that's exploded, if I'm traveling outside of 2 hours, it's very, very intentional travel.
We all have different budgets as far as our recruiting budgets. And so it goes back to, it's got to be high level competition where we're going to see multiple teams, multiple players. If we're going to, use some of our resources and time to go to those events.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to find the best players for our program. And if we have to go across the world to find that, we're willing to do that. But as Kevin alluded to, we'd rather be here in our backyard, spending 20 minutes away from our families rather than 20 hours. So, they have the benefit of that, but they also have to understand that we will go find the best talent anywhere.
Yeah. So to build on that question,
Yep.
Another great point. You guys really kind of hit it a little bit. But we see so many international players now on college rosters.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition from overseas. How are you guys as college coaches seeing those players? And do those players use up the same scholarship money that's available to US-based kids?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I do think the international player has maybe taken advantage of the US system a little bit more than, quite honestly, US kids have at the moment. And I think there's a lot of reasons that go into that. But in terms of, I think why you're seeing so many international players, I think a little bit of it is the rules are a little bit skewed to the international player in terms of being able to get 22, 23-year-olds into school nowadays that have more maturity and responsibility. They're being a little bit more proactive in the process that I've noticed. And it has nothing to do with talent. I think as coaches, we all want the most responsible and best talent we can get. And you can find that in an 18-year-old American, but you can also find it in a 22-year-old European or international player. So, I think it's definitely it's shifted over the last 10 years, no doubt, college soccer. When I played, it might have been an average age of a college roster in Division I, 20, 21. Now I'd say that average age is up to 22, 23. And it's very similar to maybe how we view the old NAIA, in terms of our sport in men's Division I. But, I don't know if you got much more to add on that, Kevin, in terms of the age. I know NAIA has kind of been portrayed as that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the NCAA has kind of followed suit a little bit.
Yeah, he's right. The old NAIA used to be, almost exclusively international. It was a lot, very, very much older. With the Eligibility Center and the NAIA and some of the rule changes, that kind of brought it back to where I would say it's very similar to both Division I and Division II. Yeah. Division II, ironically, may be the oldest average age because they're using graduate students at such a high level.
Right. Right.
The international kids absolutely do use the same scholarships as the American kids. And the way that we find them is that recruiting agencies that exist around the world, that's a robust, very, very big business right now. And so those kids are a part of these agencies, and they are extremely knowledgeable. And Ryan made a point, and this is probably a thing that you could talk to your kids about, is the international kid, when they reach out to us, they respond. they look at this as a big time, life-changing opportunity, and they treat it that way. And it makes it efficient for us. It comes across as very respectful to us. And it's incredibly rewarding to be a part of that. And there are American kids that do that, absolutely. But there are also American kids who feel entitled as if we are somehow destined to give them this opportunity, and they can ignore 3 or 4 text messages and then finally get back to us 2 weeks later. I'm telling you right now, if that's your kid or if you're listening to this, wake up, because it doesn't happen that way. In 2 weeks, we've moved on well beyond where you're at. And so I think there's a little bit of an attitude that goes into the international market as well. But it's also, it can lead to an incredibly cool opportunity for your kid when they go to a university that has a mix of American kids and internationals. You get an unbelievably diverse culture that's incredible to be around. And you just have to, again, look at each school and ask the questions as to the philosophy of the coach in recruiting internationals versus American kids. And coaches should be able to give you that answer really clearly. And all you have to do is look at their roster. Their philosophy will be seen in the roster makeup.
I've got just a little different philosophy where I'm more American based. With my scholarships, one international player costs 3 times as much as an American player. And so I haven't found someone in the international market who I can trust to send me players, because there's a lot of agents or handlers, what they call them, who are just in for the business and are just, they just want to place players, and they obviously they get a kickback, and they may send you just a shocker, but then you're spending 3 times as much on him as an American player. And so and it's, I brought on one international, and I flat out told him this: you have to be an impact player for me, because I'm spending 3 times as much. And what Kevin just talked about, they are very, 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 very appreciative of the opportunity that we have given him to go over to America and study and play soccer. But I believe that, if you put a radius around Kansas City of 4 to 5 hours, you can find a lot of, quality American players. And I enjoy recruiting. My wife and I don't have kids, so it allows me to get out and go to a lot of events, even though she probably doesn't want me getting out that much. But
Is that why you're out all the time?
so, but it also allows me to get to know the individual than the student athlete better. Because the international kid I brought over this past year, I didn't know him that well, only through email and through FaceTime and stuff like that a little bit. So there are a lot of gambles as far as bringing in international players, but I can't tell you how appreciative they are when they get over here. I mean, it means the absolute world to them. And sometimes, like what Kevin just talked about, the American players, they feel entitled, and that's one aspect I do not like about recruiting sometimes American players, because that's not right.
I got 2 more. This question is from one of the seniors that plays for us here at KCSG. And what do you think is the right time for seniors to commit? Is there a right time?
No,
Seniors to commit.
there's not a right time. Before you enroll in school in fall of 22. But in all honesty, obviously COVID's pushed everything further and further back. With the recruiting dead period, and then us open back up June 1st. So I know there's a lot of players still looking for a school, and my recommendation to them is just keep being proactive, keep getting on campuses.
And the market's flooded too.
Exactly. It's very competitive, but they can't give up on it. So I don't think there's any right or wrong time.
Yeah, commit when it's right.
Yep.
Commit when it's right. Don't get caught in this thing if it's too late, but also get off your butt, right? Don't sit around, right? This thing's not coming to you. So I hate that word, it's too late. I think you can find that opportunity. And the biggest thing is you got to do your work, and then you find the place that fits from doing your work. And then when it's right, man, you'll know it. Your gut, your heart, it'll tell you, and it'll be because you've put in the work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to put deadlines on players when we offer scholarships and everything, but as soon as then yeah, the earlier the better. That way, if we're going after, 2 players and we both got scholarships in both of them, or maybe I just put a scholarship in this one that, and he commits, then maybe I don't have to go after this one anymore. So as soon as then that's just going to help us out and, how we're going to, shape up our roster and everything. But there does come a time when you've got an offer into a kid for 5, 6, 7 months, then we're like, hey, we kind of need to know what's going on here. I mean, we're like, but I mean, I had, this weekend was a good weekend for me. I had 3 kids commit. So, I mean, this is December. So, whenever just know.
I mean, I've always found it that when you get to seniors and they get to that signing day, which is a big day, they think they have to be on a roster by then. And signing day just means the start of when we can sign players. For my program, I signed probably just half of the guys I'm bringing in next year, right? Signing day is from the November 11th or what it was this year, all the way to August next year. So there's no, I have to be signed by this time, or I have to be committed. Let the process play out and commit when it's right for you.
Last question. How often is it appropriate to email a college coach if we have not seen a response after maybe 2 or 3 weeks after sending you guys an email? Also, it depends on the age based on some of the rules. Yeah, what's appropriate in terms of the level of communication?
I've always said this: don't be afraid to bug us. I dare you to bug me. I dare you to bug me, because if you send me a second, a third, I did it the other day. I got an email and I looked at my assistant and I said, hey, research this kid. This is the 4th time he's emailed us. The first 3 times he just got caught in the mix, and it's nothing against the kid or anything like that. His email wasn't fantastic. It didn't really catch my eye. It's a busy period, man. Things are nuts. But the 4th time that kid, I was like, good grief, man, this kid really needs this. He wants this. So I put my assistant on that to research it and find it. So for me, we don't have to worry about, the contact rules with emails and stuff. Just bug a college coach, man. It's your future. How bad do you want it?
It shows that you're invested in the program, and this is a school that you want to go to. And there's something to be said about that. Instead of us going out and like there's a striker that's putting in 30 goals every single year, and we're going after him. We're really going after him, and he's not showing as much interest. But you've got this other kid who's emailing you 3-4 times a week that shows you that they are really invested in you, and they want to be part of your program. There's something to be said about that.
Those might be a little bit different, Ryan, based on rules.
Well, yeah, but I also think it goes back to them having multiple options too, right? It's not just limiting themselves to one school, because at the end of the day, we're doing the same thing, right? We have a list of maybe 7 right backs, and they should have a school of 7. That's how the process works, right? If they have a list, I have a list, and 1, 2, 3, 4 on my list goes down, well, maybe I need 6 or 7, and so I think like Kevin said, don't bug us enough, send them, and then that gives you the best chance to get into the school you want to get into.
Well, so I think I want to congratulate you for lasting this long, but 2, I want to thank our college coaches panel, Jeff Cole from Johnson County Community College, Kevin Wardlaw from Mid-America Nazarene University, and Ryan Poor from University of Missouri, Kansas City, UMKC, or KC men's soccer. Yeah. So we hopefully you found this beneficial, informative, and if you have any questions, I put up on the screen our last slide for the night, which has my email. So, like I said at the beginning, we will put the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation along with the recording of the Zoom. So, you can share, use, revisit, whatever. But if you ever have any questions, contact the club, let us know. We will help do as much as we can. I know from, for Ryan's program at UMKC, he's got 2 of our kids, Braden Yowes and Bryson Lausch from the 03-04 ECNL team. And, it's fantastic that they're going to stay local, and then we get to, be fans of them. So,
I know I've got 5 from this club. Yeah, so I recruit this club heavily. I have no problem recruiting this club.
and hopefully, yeah, in the future, Kevin,
I've had them in the past, and we've got a couple on our list right now.
there you go. So thank you guys for being here. And again, thank you for attending and participating in the Zoom. We appreciate it. Again, any questions, let us know. Have a good night. If there's no other questions, which I don't believe we do, so enjoy. Thank you.